To help students get to school on time, the town is limiting downtown construction to 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily. We ask elementary parents to use our school buses. They can accommodate over 2,000 students in grades K to 6 who are eligible to ride for free. These students could keep 1,000 parent-driven cars off the roads. And if a school bus is late, those students are not marked tardy. Using our buses will help mitigate traffic and get
Thursday, September 15th, 2022 regular meeting of the school committee. I would invite all those who are here in the studio to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So our first order of business this evening is public comment. I don't know, and don't see anybody here for public comment. So with that, I guess we can go into recognitions. Do we have any recognitions tonight?
I think tonight I'll just recognize all of the people who are serving on the elementary school building committee too. They have been working truly tirelessly over the last couple of weeks. There have been a lot of meetings, and I think we've just started to really pick up momentum. So they're working hard, and thank you to them.
That's great. Exciting.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. Then that brings us into reports, and we'll start with you, Robert, if that's okay.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. We had a rather uneventful couple weeks at Hopkinton while school's ramping up. Everyone's still getting used to the schedule. We had a club fair on Tuesday, which represented 20 different clubs, and that made it accessible for freshmen or people that weren't sure of all the options that they have at Hopkinton to pick clubs. And then in honor of 9/11, the National Honor Society put a display together outside of HHS with over 200 decorated rocks. The names of that, or the names on the rocks, are names of victims of the attacks as well as active duty soldiers who have died since 2001. For sports, the varsity Hillers are 7-4 total. And then something that I was told to bring to attention for the whole school was the lunch lines, how long they are this year compared to last year. And that's all.
Thank you. Have you experienced the long lunch lines?
Normally I bring lunch,
Okay.
and then I'll sit, and then I'll wait for the line to die down, and then I'll go up and I'll get lunch.
Oh, you have a good strategy.
Yeah, really thought it through.
Well, I appreciate bringing that back from the students. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. I wonder, not on the spot tonight, but if we're seeing an increase in how many people are getting lunch at school, or if there's
I know there's been a change in staffing at the high school. There always seems to be a change in staffing in the cafeterias, so I'll certainly pass that along and see if there's some strategies we can look at.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that moves us into the superintendent's report.
Okay. So this is the superintendent's report for September 15th, 2022. I will start with our school building projects. You know, we have the 4-classroom addition at Marathon, and working with the MSBA and Elmwood replacement project. So just so you know where we are with Marathon, the trailer and fencing should be on site in 2 weeks. The necessary permitting has all been obtained. All the construction personnel have been quarried, and groundbreaking should take place in early October. So
That's fabulous.
it would be wonderful if we were ready for September of next year, but we think we'll probably trickle into the school year a little bit. All right, in terms of the Elmwood replacement project, so this graphic was put together by our designer Perkins Eastman, and you can see that we are in this spot right here in that yellow block. And what they call that is preliminary design. So what we've been really concentrating on in these last couple of weeks are the existing conditions. And one of the things that the MSBA tells you you must do is study your current site. It's not an option not to. And then to look at alternative sites. And so we did spend a significant amount of time just the other day, taking a look at other sites, and I'll get to that slide in just a moment. Another slide that Perkins Eastman put together for us is, how are we, kind of going to take a look at the current school and the community's needs and the educational needs and all of that. And we will be putting together a visioning team. We'll have faculty forums. We had our first one yesterday afternoon. There will be a student forum, and then there will be community forums. The first one of those is virtual, and it's next Monday night on the 19th. And so there's this really nice iterative process where we engage with the community, we present findings to the school committee, to the school building committee, we gather more information, we engage with the community, we present to the school committee. So that will continue to happen for the next couple of months. And then out of that, we'll be able to bring you some options. And again, that will be sort of iterative. And by the time we get to February, we should have a very good sense of where we're going. All right, and I know that people are kind of wondering, how many sites do you actually look at? So this is a map of Hopkinton, and you can see that this group is looking at over 40 sites. Now, naturally, you're going to eliminate some of them, and 40 seems outrageously large. These were chosen only because they are 10 acres or more. So they have not yet been evaluated for their geography, meaning that some of those ones that are super outliers, like they are on the borders of other communities, are probably not so great, because if you live at the other end of the community, it would be a heck of a ride for you to get to one of those places. So maybe something more centralized in the community would be better than something on the outskirts of the community. We look at things like, are there wetlands? Is there ledge? We look at the shape of the property. Would it be difficult to put the footprint of the school that we're hoping to build on the shape of that parcel of land? We think about whether or not there are already water and sewage services accessible on that parcel, or would you have to bring those things in, or at least how close are the tie-ins? We are thinking about whether the properties are town-owned or privately owned parcels. So even in that mix of 40, you will see that there are lots of them that are privately owned parcels, which means that if one of them was wonderfully appealing and the seller didn't want to sell, it would be taken off the table. So, and then of course, proximity to things like gas lines or other easements. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. The big orange things that you see on there are things that are current schools, or the old center school is on there as well.
I think one other thing John mentioned was if you can ease of getting to the parcel. Like there's some parcels that are more like landlocked. You'd need like a private road to get around things in order to get to the parcel.
Yes, I mean there are some parcels that are on that map, and they are really attractive parcels, but accessing them would be super challenging and probably very costly. And it's not that you can't do it, is it feasible?
Right.
All right, I hope people in town have seen this flyer. It has been sent out, I think, through multiple media. And this is just a flyer that tells people what they can expect and when they can expect it. So on Monday, that people have already heard a lot about our community kickoff, and that's going to be a virtual forum. And then there will be follow-up forums on October 4th, November 2nd, December 7th, and in mid-January, the school committee will be deliberating on grade configuration and making decisions along those lines. And on January 24th, there will be a community forum where we can ask people's thoughts on sort of that short list of options, and then hopefully in mid-February the building committee will be delivering that final decision on the preferred option.
Dr. Kavanaugh, where can the community members see the time and link for the virtual? How can they get the actual access information?
So I am hoping that we can get that on the school's website.
Okay.
I think what you'll see on this next slide is Perkins Eastman is actually developing a website for us exclusively for this project, and it's actually a really nice website, and it's, I think, super concise. But The circles that you see at the bottom of that, they actually extend down. And so any of the kinds of questions that you have are under pretty logical headings, and you can just kind of click on them and get what you need. But we'll make sure that that flyer gets onto our website, at least for now.
Yeah.
And it will have a QR code on it, and it will have a link to the webinar.
And can we get the forums anyway on either the town calendar or our calendar, so they're actually a
That would
listed
be helpful,
event?
sure.
That would be great.
Yes.
The first look, the one on Monday is gonna also be shown by HCAM, right?
It is, yes.
So it would be on their calendar as well, probably somewhere, right?
I wonder if it isn't already.
Yeah.
They are planning to broadcast it for us. All right, just a quick update on enrollment. You've seen this one hundreds of times. This is Dr. Wagman's predictions for where we would be in 22-23, which is the school year we are currently launching. And you know that when we get to those total numbers over there, we typically think about those as the end of the year. So the end of year estimate for the entire enrollment in the Hopkins Public Schools, according to Dr. Wagman's predictions, of 4,104 students. In the following year, it's 4,186 students. If you take a look at, I know this is very hard for you to read, but over on the right-hand side, the enrollment as of today, it shows you the number of students in every one of the grades. And if you can't see that far away, pre-K is at 102. So we are officially over 100 students. And Mrs. DeBow and I were looking back at when Marathon opened, and there were 50 students in the pre-K. Kindergarten, 298, grade 1, 297, grade 2, 314, grade 3, 313, grade 4, 340, grade 5, 300, grade 6, 339, grade 7, 322, grade 8, 315, grade 9, 315, grade 10, 326, grade 11, 283, and grade 12 is at 311. So we are at 4,178 students, and so what that means is that if our actual right now is 4,178, we have exceeded this year's prediction already, and we're not anywhere near the end of the school year. And you know we usually add kids. And then if we look at the prediction for 23-24, we are about 8 students away from reaching that number.
One question, since we've been talking about the Elmwood Building Committee, right? There were projections given to us by MSBA.
Yes.
And, you know, there's an averaging out of those projections, but I was wondering, on a yearly basis, how does that match what we're seeing here? Because if they're way off, then we're already behind on the average that they're giving us, right?
The MSBA numbers are actually bigger than Dr. Wagman's numbers.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
I wanted to add the HCAM calendar has so it has a direct link to
Oh,
Monday's
wonderful.
forum. Yeah.
That's great.
I think just to comment on this, thank you for sharing this, but I take away from this the relative accuracy of the projections, and so where we see already, I know we've launched and we'll be funding, I think tonight, the added study of all the campus facilities, but we can already anticipate that where we saw pinch points in the original projections, those will very likely play out. So it's very urgent that we get to this. So thank you for keeping an eye on it.
Yes. I think, when we say we're 100 students over, that does sound like a lot, but if you spread them out over 13 grades, it feels a lot better.
Yeah.
I think one other thing that I was surprised by was your year splits. Like, I expected with the increase in enrollment that we have that you would see like kind of heavier enrollment, like kindergarten moving upwards, right? But it's very evenly split across the grades. I was very surprised by that.
We are very close now to every class being over 300.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
The one thing that also concerns me is when you look at last year, we moved from October till the end of the year, we added 60 students. If we add another comparable number, that's pretty far off of our
Yes.
original projection.
And we typically do add a lot of students during the school year. All right. we get all of the housing permits from the building office in town, and so Mrs. Rodmick and I were talking about them today, and so I said, I'm just going to include this as a fun fact. So this year, we had 41 new residential permits in Hopkinton, which may be helpful, given the fact that in previous years, we've had 106, 95, and 875. So-
Sorry, is this academic year, calendar year?
It's
Calendar year. So in 2022, year to date, or 2021? We had
2022 year-to-date is
Okay.
41.
That's all I have for you.
It's quite a bit. Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. That moves us into the school committee chair report. Payroll warrant S23005 has been approved. Operating warrants 23010 and 23011 have been approved, and the copy is in the packet. Did not receive a whole lot of email between our last meeting and this meeting, just a couple about specific student concerns. Anybody have liaison reports?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. If you want to go. I was just going to let you know that tomorrow is the Freedom Team's first active bystander training. It's the first of 2. We've had so much interest. We capped the first 2 sessions at 90 students, and we've already got probably 30, 40 more interested in another session. So it starts tomorrow. The second one is on whatever the next half day is, and we're really excited about all the interest.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Did I see that students who participate get volunteer service hours?
Yeah, they get,
And a gift
if
card,
they
I feel
attend
like there
both
was too.
sessions, they get service hours, we'll send them a certificate, and the kids that aren't doing it for service hours get a gift certificate. But everybody gets pizza, so we all win there.
Okay, so Youth Commission had their first meeting since last January. They've had, once again, tremendous reorganization, and they are planning to have a September 21st planning session with a consultant and Hopkinton Youth and Family Services to get a stronger feel for, what their mission is, what they really want to go after, and how they want to support like school committee and how they might want support from the schools.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, I think that's really awesome.
I can report the Sustainable Green Committee met. As you can probably imagine, schools are a large consumer in town. We have a lot of facilities in town, so the committee that is working on the, I think, climate action plan is very interested in the schools. So some of the things they asked about, just so you know, they were curious about our current solar contracts, and specifically, they're looking at transportation. Of course, explain that we don't own our buses and that we don't that we use a contractor. But they were curious if the solar canopy would be designed to in the future be equipped with EV charging stations. I don't know. I said I would pass that on. We don't have electric buses yet.
Pass on your question.
Okay. So they were just thinking, even if we don't build it in, are they designed for easy adaptation down the line?
So the solar canopy itself is completely unrelated to EV chargers.
Okay.
So the whole thing with EV chargers really is your electrical infrastructure.
Yeah.
So you would just run electric line to the bus parking lot to install EV chargers. So the solar canopy is unrelated.
Okay.
It just would be an additional. I don't know if the committee recalls, but 2 years ago, we actually had a grant for 2 EV buses. But the cost for the buses at that time was over $300,000, and the grant was only for $100,000 each. So that left the town on the hook for $200,000 for buses that technically we don't own. So the financing didn't work. The state now obviously has put together much better packages and incentives. So right now, those incentives are really geared more towards cities with a high propensity of low income. So they'll probably be the first focus of the round of funding for the EV buses. And then it would start to trickle out more, that would become available for vendors such as ours.
Okay.
So that's the future of that.
Well, I can report that back. Thank you. That's great. So just to be clear on the process, our vendor, currently Conley, right, would come to us if it becomes possible for us to access a grant, or do we go to them and ask them to pursue a grant opportunity?
I've already been in conversation with Connolly actually for a number of years over about this. And right now it is not in their pocket to be able to do it.
Yeah.
They would have to apply for the funding with the funding tied to Hopkinton. So it would have to be tied to a school district.
Okay.
So that agreement would probably be part of our future contracts, or when they write that grant, but we're not there yet.
Thank you. Thank you for all that information. I did encourage the members of the Sustainable Green Committee to attend the public forums on construction. They were very excited about the designer selection and the fact that there is a lens around sustainability. Of course, you have to pay for all the features that you add, so it's a matter of balancing cost and benefit. But and they also reported to me that composting will be going forward at the high school. I don't know if that's a fact, but that's what they believe it is going to start. I said it doesn't really fall under our purview, but we did hear that presentation, and they were under the impression it was going to start. I don't know, Robert, if you've heard anything about composting at the high school?
Not much of it, but
Okay.
I also haven't looked out for it too much.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been in the memo or anything.
Okay.
But they did have a polyarts booth, I think. Composting at the high school.
I know our 18 to 22 kids had a polyarts.
Yes, they did. I stopped
And
there
I
too.
think it was rather lucrative for them, so.
I heard they have stuff going all the way to New Zealand.
Oh, really? It's nice. I think there'll be a family day too.
Oh, great. Do you have any?
Those are the highlights.
Okay. All right. So I attended the Marathon Fund Committee this week, and they discussed the budget for the year. And specific to the schools, they give out scholarships to seniors. They discussed giving 6 scholarships this year at $1,500 a piece, and they're going to look. The applications for all of the scholarships actually they go out in a bit. So that was it for me with liaison reports. So I think at this point we can invite our wonderful elementary school principals up, Mrs. DeBow, Mrs. Carver, and Mrs. Bolello, so that we can do our school improvement plans.
All right, we're so glad
Oh,
they were
boy.
telling me I need to bump you over, so thanks. I was getting that job.
She was ready.
Well, hello.
Hi.
Feels like I haven't seen you in a while.
I know, I feel like the table's bigger now. From the last time I was here.
It feels bigger.
It does, it does.
I think it's different for sure.
Yeah. We are happy to be here. We've had a great start to the school year and ready to talk about our plans ahead.
Excellent.
As the past couple of years, Elmwood and, look, I'm talking like Elmwood's my school. We're a little tired at the beginning of the year. It's a little tricky for us. We've had a shared plan, Marathon and Elmwood. It continues, with alignment through, as you heard, the plans, the last school committee meeting in Hopkins, so that we have a continuity throughout our buildings. But we've really focused on social emotional learning. It continues to be present in our plans. But yet what we're doing with that goal changes each year. We do something a little deeper, we have a little different direction with it. Something that we are working on now is continuing our positive behavior incentive systems, our PBIS programs. We are doing a fantastic job with what is called Tier 1 interventions. That's that universal that applies across the schools, school-wide expectations. I mean, at this point, kindergartners can probably already share what those 3 expectations are. We really do a lot of dense reinforcement that carries through when they get to Elmwood, and they've got some tickets from their Eagle swoops. And it just really helps children do what they need to do when they know what is expected. Those expectations are clear. This year, that is transitioning to the next level, a Tier 2 we were sustaining tier 1, but now we're moving into tier 2, which is for the children that need a little bit more. What are we going to do to make sure that they're successful? You know, ideally, what you do addresses everyone's needs, but that's not realistic. That's not really reality. Someone might need a little bit more in a particular area. So that is the work that our PBIS team, we have coaches, a wonderful grant through UConn, Carla Burley, our Director of Social Emotional Learning, and Karen Zaleski, our Director of Student Services, helps coordinate that so that then comes back to our schools to build our capacity. We have fantastic counselors at our buildings. I think we can attest to that, but it's building their tool sets because we're never done learning. So that's where we are with our PBIS at this stage.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak about how it looks at Elmwood. And I want to just also acknowledge I have a new assistant principal at Elmwood. So Michelle Tynan started in July. And Michelle came to us with experience as a kindergarten teacher mostly, and also was a principal and an assistant principal. So that was sort of interesting to me that someone had all of that experience. And so I'd just like to shout out to her, and I'd also like to thank the school council that worked with us. And Deb Moriarty worked really closely with all of us, I think, to support the crafting of some of our goals. And redundant to some of what Lauren said, PBIS is something that we're using at Elmwood School. Our tier 1 systems are in place nicely. We have 3 rules too. They're different from, Lauren's are all about who they take care of and what, right?
Yep.
And at Elmwood School, we say be safe, be responsible, and be respectful. And that really covers a lot of ground. You can almost tie that into any naughty behavior that takes place at school. But what we did we had a tier 1 team, and Elmwood does have tickets, and tickets are provided to students when something is recognized as demonstrating one of those 3 things. Something else that the team put in place this year was office referrals. So if a student makes a bad choice, an office referral would be considered a negative. The teacher so that's not what they put in place. That was already in place. So an office referral would be, okay, you're going to need to go down and talk to Mrs. Carver and talk about what happened. But this year we instituted a positive office referral. So when students were identified as doing something maybe unexpected in a really nice way, they got a little referral to come down to the office. The teachers would fill out what the child did, how it related to our expectations. They would come into the office. We would have a, ooh, look at you. I would make a copy of the referral. One copy would go on the bulletin board in the hallway outside my office, and the other copy would go home to be shared with families. And students would come by and they'd look and try to find their referrals. Some kids got more than one. There probably were students that didn't get one. But as soon as there were a couple on the board, it really became something that other teachers began to recognize. So that's something that we're doing. You're going to still, do you have more to say about number 1?
Yes.
Okay. We didn't practice this.
That's a very quick thing. I like the positive office referrals because as a mom of a child with ADD, tickets don't work.
Oh, really?
A child with ADD doesn't have the ability to hold in their heads the fact that if they're good for 24 hours or 48 hours, they'll get a reward. That kind of delay of reward is not very useful for them. But something like you did something good and you're immediately getting positive reinforcement by getting like a positive office referral is fantastic.
And most of, I think, what we do is immediate. So sometimes it's, look at you, you're being safe, thank you. And that's what they get. Sometimes it's, sometimes when kids go by my, wherever I might be, it's kind of I'm quietly, I try, I want quiet halls, so I shouldn't be shouting about how great somebody's doing. But I acknowledge it in that way, so it's just a real quick. Some kids don't like that, so it could be a whisper. Look at you, I really like it. And some kids don't want to be acknowledged at all. So, and we learn that pretty quickly. Who's who? And some kids, it's a ticket that you sort of pull out of a little pouch and hand it immediately. So it's in that moment when it's recognized, hey, look at you. We use tickets in the cafeteria in a slightly different way because, of course, the incentives need to be a little bigger. When you have 7 or 8 classrooms in the cafeteria at once for 30 minutes and lunch only takes 3. So you can imagine what that looks like. And we give tickets that then go right into a raffle jar, and then we pull names from a raffle. So all
So
those
there's a lot
different
of
layers.
immediacy.
Yeah, we try
Yeah.
to.
That's really nice.
And at Marathon, it's immediate as well. We have cubby paws, so it's take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of our school. So, and the teachers will circle what it's for. You're taking care of you. Others, sometimes they get like a triple and they're doing it all. And we found last year recess was a challenging time. How do you manage giving out the cubby paws? Because we would keep track of the data, where is it happening in hallways and classrooms and recess. It was really hard to give the cubby paws and manage it. So our team worked on some solutions this year. We have stamps. So it's out at recess. You can get a quick stamp. You come in, you transfer that. And what we're going to do is the incentive are cubby buggies. The HPTO has helped us. So it's like a beach wagon, the kind you would, like an old red wagon, but easier to maneuver now with really fun things to play and do with. So it's like an extra creative playtime with your classmates with different things. Last year, the incentive at recess to help everybody sort of get on board with recess, we got some basketball hoops. So trying to build that collective responsibility, not that I have to get so many tickets to trade in and earn, because that is hard. Young kids need that immediate feedback, and that really helps reinforce. And what's wonderful is our first graders, they're the big kids at school. And when you think they're 6 and 7, but there are role models and they rise to it. Today I had a first grader take a kindergartner to class because that child wasn't sure where, and it was the next, do you know where it is? Okay, wonderful, great. And you just love, because it's someone who's a little busy. You love how great that they got that job to go bring someone and make sure, and granted, we have adults all around, but that child felt fantastic for that. So having that clear, consistent language, that immediate feedback, so that children feel good and they can model the behavior, and then they also can help address it when someone else isn't addressing or showing that behavior, because we've had to, as you can imagine, work with classes, because while I follow the rules, maybe that student doesn't, and why not? We all learn differently, so explaining that to children, that we're helping each other learn, because while you can listen and follow the rules right away, Anne might need them a few more times, and then she's got to. So we work on that in a positive way, that we're a team and we're helping each other out, and it really, having the clear, consistent language across domains, related arts, the lunch and cafeteria, has made a tremendous difference for us. So things that we look forward to this year, and it's in there, is having that parent education piece. Now that we're sort of back to having events and people in the buildings, having opportunities to share that education with families. Because often what children will do at home, they don't necessarily do at school, and vice versa. So sometimes they can be absolutely delightful at school, not at home, so parents are looking for strategies. Or we might be having a hard time, and home is, a piece of cake, but there might be no demands and whatnot, and all that good stuff. So yes, we've got more to this goal.
No, you go.
Something else that we wanted to talk about is expanding our culturally responsive practices. So we've done work with this, and now just even the greater focus of committing to that, where we've had small groups at our buildings participate in, you've heard about Black Print, the work that leaders throughout the district have participated in to expand our knowledge and understanding, really bringing that to the staff level, the classroom level. So what that would entail is shared readings, whether it's articles or books together, doing what's called walkthroughs and look-fors. Last year, we did that with Black Print, and what was really fabulous about that, we had the same look-fors at Marathon, the high school, and the middle school. And you thought, gosh, how are you going to use that same guide? We're quite apprehensive how it would work, and it was actually fantastic. We had environmental, and the classroom environment, and I can't remember what the other one was right now, but we used the same rubric, if you will, to sort of look where we were, and we could see elements of culturally responsive practices in all of those buildings at various levels. So we'll do that within our buildings this year, so that teachers have that sense of, okay, I've got this, that's wonderful, where can I grow, what do you have? And it was a terrific experience with that.
And I think both Lauren and Vanessa have suggested books that they're using with their staff. We're going to use some of those same books with staff at Elmwood School during our BBMs and our faculty meetings, kind of introducing topics to staff, having conversations about things that they may or may not realize needs to be considered in their teaching now, and just bringing the idea of change. Most of culturally responsive teaching is really what's good for all kids, but being sure that teachers are mindful of the things that students need in order to feel safe and be respected and be successful in our classrooms. So that's work we'll continue to do this year.
We've done a lot with curriculum during the pandemic to shore up our lessons, but one aspect that needs some greater attention is written language. So we've done a lot with reading in terms of decodable books, leveled books for comprehension, varying the genre of books we've had so that lesson aspect is quite robust. The written language we haven't sort of tended to in a few years. Back at Center School years ago, we had training, and what's fabulous, that training has gone through the district, through the middle school at least, which is a training for strategies to apply to written language. It's called SRSD. So what that stands for is Student Regulated Strategy Development, where you're teaching children strategies to apply to writing, visuals, mnemonics, so that children often come into school, write about your weekend. For some children, that is very hard to do. It's so open-ended. I don't know what I did. They did a lot, but it's too much for them. So having, an example might be TIDE, and that stands for topic, important detail, exciting, and, all these different cues to help kids apply to writing. We've done that. We need to revisit that, as well as what more are we adding to writing. And with that, looking at our rubrics. How are we assessing writing and writing progress, and how does that flow from grade to grade? So we're looking forward to that. This is definitely going to be a multi-year goal because we want to do it and do it well. So our plan is to start with our ELA director, getting groups of teachers. We hope our sub-pool is rich this year. It's been a little challenging the last few years, to meet monthly, to go over this, to work, because teachers have to be involved in the process. They're the ones that are sort of on the front lines and can share, this is what I noticed, this is what's happening in this classroom, I think this would work now, that might be better 2 months from now. And we're really looking forward to that.
There have been times when we've brought professional development for staff and sort of handed them, here's some good practices. What the work that Lauren is describing is pulling teachers out of the classroom on a school day, putting them in teams with their colleagues, and actually going through the standards, looking at different rubrics, kind of digging through the curriculum and working with Deb to put something together at both 2nd and 3rd grade, but the ownership will be there because they're working in a team. And the feedback that we've gotten is while teachers hate to be out of their classrooms for even a short period of time, sometimes when we've been able, and pre-pandemic we were able to do this with SRSD and other things, take a whole day, get a sub in a classroom, and for that period of time teachers really focus on the work of the curriculum work. They come away beaming and saying, I'm going to go into my classroom tomorrow and use that. So we know that it's the most effective way to provide professional development for the teachers, and their buy-in comes from their input and working with other strong professionals. As Lauren said, it's going to rely on us to be in classrooms, or hopefully we do have some substitutes. And so we can cover teachers to do this important work.
And you'll see children, even at the kindergarten level, writing, using self-talk, and it's wonderful because they see themselves as writers. Writing can seem so overwhelming, but we know writing is a critical skill to academic success. You write effectively, communicate, which at our level there might be a lot of pictures. That's great. You're communicating what you thought, what you want. That's a great start, because even at our lower level, children almost feel defeated. Well, I can't write. You're telling me what you want. I understand you're communicating. So building up that confidence so that they become what we almost say fearless writers. They're not afraid of their words. They'll give it a go. Not just use easy words they can spell, but some of those great vocabulary words that we learn, it's wonderful.
If I could just, are you done?
You can
I just want to say, something that I forgot to mention in the SEL realm is that there are 6 teachers at Elmwood School that are going to participate in what's called a CELOC study, which is through Yale University. And these teachers have volunteered to be part of this study, it should be very exciting work. They're going to wear video cameras sometimes and display, we're unsure exactly how it's all going to come out, and Carla Burley is helping us organize the work, but they're going to videotape themselves teaching just in a typical way, but then focus on the social emotional learning practices that they are using in their classroom instruction, and eventually the work through looking at videos and meeting with other people across the country. They're going to identify a checklist that other educators can use to kind of determine. SEL can be such a tricky thing to measure and to ensure that people are doing it well. So this checklist will help teachers everywhere in our country to determine, am I doing this correctly, and working on something that they're calling a checklist for SEL instruction. So I think that's going to be really exciting, and 6 teachers volunteered, and I think they're tentatively saying, I'm excited about this, but they're also worried. Teachers don't really love to be videotaped, so shout out to them, and I'm grateful that they're going to give it a try, and Carla Burley for bringing it to us. I think that's all.
Your tickets are, I had a child last year in Marathon and one in Elmwood, and now they both have them in their rooms, and it was like kind of a mini Fight Club situation about who had more. But it's like, if you're gonna fight about something, it might as well be about being a good person, right?
I love the positive spin.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Because I don't think we had the cubby pause when your oldest was in Marathon,
No.
so that's new.
He was a
So-
little mad about
Yes,
that. I will say. He was upset, but he did get some tickets from Elmwood, so he's like, I got some too, and
That's great.
so yeah.
Well, the 3 of us have worked really hard over the course of the last many years to be sure that if something good is happening at Hopkins or Elmwood or Marathon, that we share the good ideas, that we align our practices so that we have some consistency as it makes sense. Lauren's little people have it in a slightly different way, and I know Vanessa is always saying, I'm getting them ready for middle school, but I think it's important to recognize that we work closely together. We worked over the summer to align some of our work, and I rely on my colleagues to help keep me on track and bring good things to our kids. So a shout out to them too.
And Ann is so good. We have a great school council as well. It's parent members, community members, as well as staff members. And they really do a great job checking in, asking us questions when we talk about goals. What do you think of this? And it's great. Great. It's great. You might have questions or?
Anybody have questions?
No. It all sounds
great.
wonderful. It sounds wonderful. Yeah.
That's great.
I was thinking when you were talking about the office referrals, how different just the entire approach, the term office referral from back when we were in school.
Right.
It was you're being sent to the principal. The
Parents
connotation
will
is very
get
different.
nervous when we know children's name, and we have to explain it's very different now. They come to us when they earn a break. We play games with them. We're part of their team. So that, because it's a different feeling from when they were children at school. And we approach education, all 3 of us, very differently. That quite often, they are great things that kids are coming to see us for. And that's just wonderful because they feel proud and they know that we share that with them.
And I was going to say, even when it isn't all positive, even when a child comes in because they've made a bad choice or they've done something that's unexpected, gone are the days where you say, that was bad, you'll be punished. That's, I never expect to see that again. It's really, it's so much more time consuming because it's, what happened, help me understand, who else was involved, how can, and how can we make it better? I met with 2 little boys today, and there had been something unexpected that happened between them, and finally this one little guy said, how can I pay you back for that? And I said, I think he's trying to say, how could I repair this, or how could I make it up to you? And the other little guy said, well, you really can't. You hurt my feelings. But the whole exchange, I just thought was so much healthier than what probably was happening, 30 years ago. That they both had the gumption to share their thinking and talk. I think it's sort of a testament to the good work that's happening. That kids have the words and the ability and the confidence to say, you hurt my feelings, I was mad, all right, I'll get over it. And the other boy, a sincere apology. So it's really kind of nice.
That, it's almost our level of restorative justice. When we've done that, even at the marathon level, having a child share how they felt is so powerful because the other child sees it and sees, okay, that wasn't a good choice. And it's a genuine exchange. We obviously help facilitate it because you have to get past that's okay. Well, is it okay? How did you feel? And as children become more used to expressing that, because it's okay to share how you feel. Often children won't advocate for themselves because they think it's rude, they're not being polite, when actually that is a good thing. So advocacy, speaking up for yourself is a skill that we work on with children.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. Just like when we're talking about reading, we start to talk about dyslexia and monitoring students and can we tell. When we talk about writing, now we're talking about dysgraphia, right? Do you have techniques and thoughts about how to identify students that are struggling with writing, not because of sort of physical difficulties, I guess, but
right,
interpreting.
Not motor difficulties.
Right.
So for us at our level, because when they are beginning to put their thoughts down to paper, we can often see when there's a disconnect, when the letters aren't matching what the sounds would be, so that clues us in as they're writing things, because to them it might make sense, but we can see that's not what it should be. And then we do our deeper looks of what's happening. Are they understanding? Is it, phonemic awareness? Is it phonics? It kind of helps give us an indication of when something's not going down on the paper as it should, to do some more look for us.
And the learning specialists are involved in the work as well.
Could I add to that too?
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it sort of fits, because
Yes.
as we talk about, we have early elementary K3, and then there is a developmental change that happens around fourth grade.
Yes.
That 4 to 6 range is a little bit different, where learning to read, learning to write, and then using reading and writing to explain our thinking and really dig deeper, comprehension, analyzing what we read. And what I would say is that the work with SRSD has been essential for all our learners, but especially for our students who do struggle with dysgraphia as they move through the grades. Because we now are using common language and common organizers all the way through the grades. And we've talked about this over the past couple of years, ever since we started implementing SRSD. That whole self-regulation piece works for all children, but it is especially powerful for students with ADHD, as we know that's usually comorbid with a dyslexia or dysgraphia. So learning how to think about what's going on in my brain and my body, and how do I make sure I'm self-regulated to go into writing. But also, SRSD is rooted in very strong work with organizers. And when I came to Hopkinton 9 years ago, students who weren't given a graphic organizer sometimes had no idea how to begin. And as somebody with dysgraphia really struggles with that. Through the process of SRSD, by the time they get to 4th and 5th grade, children are making their own organizers. And we see that successfully with students with special education needs, all the way to our highest learners, really accelerated writers. And certainly the level of sophistication varies a lot, but I would say that that's one of SRSD's biggest strengths, is that it works for the struggling writer and the students who are very sophisticated writers at the same time. It's very differentiated.
Thank you very much.
And even at the kindergarten level, we work on informational writing, narrative writing, and opinion writing, which you can think, oh my gosh, but children, what their first word is usually yes or no, that's their opinion, so we just start at a lower level, and obviously it expands as you move through the grades. Do you like indoor recess or outdoor recess?
And
so
by 4th and 5th grade, that moves into persuasive writing from opinion writing, and we talk a lot about literary analysis. That's what we are expecting students to be able to do in 4th and 5th grade. So again, there is quite a big shift between what's happening K3 and the expectations as they're moving into a secondary model. And so that's that bridge that they're laying the foundation for, the language, how to do graphic organizers, how to regulate ourselves for writing and reading. And then as they move into the upper elementary grades and into middle school, there's that shift that occurs. Literary analysis becomes really essential for a lot of our reading tasks, but persuasive writing or informational writing moving into the areas of science and social studies a lot by 4th and 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So there are quite a few similarities between our plans. We also at Hopkins School have a social emotional learning goal, and we also have an academic goal. Our first goal, the social emotional learning goal, the two main areas are very similar to what Lauren and Ann were talking about. And the first piece is really, again, looking at social emotional learning practices and our PBIS initiatives that we've been working on. We've been using CARES cards for about 5 or 6 years at Hopkins now. And it has evolved and I would say definitely improved over the years, especially as with our work in part of the PBIS Academy over the last 3 years, because there's been a lot of collaboration and sharing of ideas. And I'm very proud of the work that Hopkins has done to weave not only the PBIS initiatives, but the strong practices we already had in social emotional learning that came out of responsive classroom. So the CARES language is from responsive classroom, and we're moving towards thinking about CARES cards as these are the positive behaviors we want to see from children, but then pairing that also with our work with principals, cabinet, and our core values. So these are the things we value in our school community, because again, as students are moving into puberty and adolescence, it's not just thinking about ourselves. We're developing our own identities. We talk about that all the time at Hopkins, only one you, right? Who makes you unique? But we also are thinking about the people around us. So as students get into 4th grade, all of a sudden there's a lot more concern about what's happening around me. The social world, all of a sudden moving into 5th and 6th grade, you're much more concerned about your social interactions than you are your parents or your adults in your life. And so we try to nurture that between these two pieces. The positive behavior incentives with our CARES cards, which is immediate and a way for every child in our school to feel rewarded for positive behaviors. And we also have things tied to that. Our book vending machine, which I've shared in the past, has become a hugely successful and popular piece. But with our PBIS team, we're really looking to expand the incentives and thinking about the pubescent child and, okay, they're very concerned about how to build in that social piece. So building in more social rewards as well for our students that are not monetarily tied, but opportunities and experiences. They're very into that at Hopkins. So we're excited about the opportunity to expand that. As part of the PBIS team and Academy, we have gone through a process of data analysis, and we talk about different kinds of data. And so our work at Hopkins School is really using the Tiered Fidelity Inventory, it's called the TFI, to really look at how are we doing with our practices. How frequently are we giving out CARES cards? And one of the pieces that came out of last year was that it sort of ebbed and flowed. And it ebbed and flowed a little bit with whether or not we had toner, which last year was a big issue. The toner challenges of 2021 were a real thing. But we really reflected on that, and so we've been able to, now as we're coming out of the pandemic, bring back, I'm sorry, I'm suffering smoke inhalation from the Pacific Northwest, so I'm still recovering from the forest fires last weekend. With the TFI, what we were seeing is there was this ebb and flow. We've been able to bring back the practice of our principals cabinet members who are rewarded each month for those core values, helping give out those cards. Again, this is honoring the upper elementary student who's very interested in social interactions. So our principals cabinet members who have demonstrated these core values are helping give out CARES cards to their classmates who are showing the positive behaviors. They become part of that system. And that is, in my opinion, really valuing what's so critical and important to these kids is also the recommendation that, oh, a peer has seen this, somebody else has recognized in a friend has noticed that I was showing cooperation or I was showing self-control. So that's been brought back this last year. We're starting to bring that back, this coming year. So Principal's Cabinet is a huge part of what we do. We're bringing back our whole school meetings. We're starting with grade level meetings tomorrow. So fourth graders last spring who were on Principal's Cabinet for leadership and effort at the end of the year have been planning with me, and they will be leading the grade 4 meeting and the grade 5 meeting tomorrow. And that meeting will be rolling out these expectations formally. So teachers have been already starting to give CARES cards out, but the students are going to be working with me to launch this as a whole school, talking about our values, our core values that will be celebrated each month, and also the behaviors that they've been learning about in their classrooms and how that correlates with them getting CARES cards. So we're starting to, again, build connections to children. Ann and Lauren mentioned the Tier 2 work. We've been doing a lot of talk over the last couple of years about MTSS, the tiered supports. And we feel that we have good systems in place, but we do have limited resources. That's just the reality. And so helping build the capacity of our teachers to do a lot of this work alongside with the support of our counselors and our PBIS teams, we started a Google site, a PBIS site that is our staff uses all around in terms of resources. And the PBIS team this year, along with our Tier 2 team that's just been launched, that's our best team, is working on that, is rolling out resources to teachers. And again, working alongside Carla Burley to analyze the data we have, who are getting behavior reflection sheets. What are those behavior reflection sheets for? Are there certain classrooms where empathy or where lessons need to be further implemented? Are we seeing a lot of behavior reflection sheets in this fourth grade class around self-control? So both at class levels, we can do more lessons, embed more work for those individual classes. Small group work, that would be more Tier 2, pull out with a counselor perhaps. And then Tier 3, are there specific students who they've had a lot of behavior reflection sheets on this same topic? How do we pull the families in and make sure we're really addressing what might be a more targeted need? And so that's the work going forward in terms of PBIS over this next year. We feel very lucky that at 4th and 5th grade, because of the age of our students, we're able to also adopt a new assessment for this. It's called the HSA, the Holistic Student Assessment. I know you heard about this last year. It was launched at the middle school. 4th and 5th graders are eligible to take that. It looks a little different there, but I've been working with Carla Burley over about the last 2 months to prepare, and I'm very excited that we're going to be able to give that assessment. It will give us another data point into students that might need Tier 2 supports across our school and Tier 3 supports. We also are continuing our work in culturally responsive practices at Hopkins. Ann and Lauren mentioned the book clubs. We did start that last year. This is a year 2 goal, and so that work will continue. Last year, the teams worked individually. They self-selected. We talk a lot about differentiation, so we tried to bring that in with our staff and model that they self-selected books. This year, we're going to take those same titles and do some cross-work across our building. We feel that there's a lot of trust. We've had almost no turnover at Hopkins School this year. We actually only have 1 new professional staff member after only 2 the year before. And so because of that, it's a very strong culture and community that I think we're all really proud of. And so we feel ready to delve into more of those conversations as a full staff. Where last year that smaller book club was a better, safer place to start some of these more difficult conversations around race and gender. And certainly in the middle grades, as we go into puberty, I mentioned this last night to the 5th grade parents at curriculum night. Well, we definitely have students interested in dinosaurs and unicorns. We also have students who are thinking about dating, and we have students who are wondering about who I am interested in. And so gender and sexuality are certainly something that we have to start thinking about, though not all our students are ready. And so it makes it a tricky time, and 4th grade is really where, for some of our students, that's starting to occur. So that's part of our work with our faculty. How do you wrestle with the fact that you have a child who really is still in the dinosaur or unicorn stage, sitting next to a child who is texting and exploring relationships and having crushes. It's a very exciting time, but it's complicated, and it keeps the counselors in the office busy. So that's our first goal, social emotional learning. Our second goal is continues from last year again. There's been quite a lot of adjustments. Oh, it should say differentiation there.
Yes.
So, okay.
That's an error on my part, but yeah, goal 2 is definitely differentiated.
Yeah, so if you look at the writing below it, you can see that the second goal is differentiated instruction across curricular areas. This is the year 2 of 2 for this. We feel that we've done a lot of great work with assessment at Hopkins School. We are proud of our work around common assessments. We've brought in a lot of those, and now using those tools to analyze it in our PLCs, and we look forward to doing a lot more of that this year again. This work has really led to a lot of flexible grouping, and I've talked about this when we were talking about differentiated across the grades in a different school committee meeting last spring. I shared a lot of the ways that we do differentiation across the curricular areas. Again, thinking about primary grades, K-3, students are in self-contained classrooms. As they move into the upper elementary grades, and we are really diving into science and social studies and content area learning very differently than third grade. Fourth graders spend almost twice as much time in science and social studies. So the instructional minutes shift as you move into the middle grades, because students have mastered, most of our students have mastered learning to read, reading to learn, and that includes across the content areas. So fourth and fifth graders spend a lot of time in science and social studies, and we want to make sure that we are really embedding a lot of deep thinking in those content areas. And this is where the SRSD work is going to continue to live in addition to in our ELA classes. So we too will be launching some more work with SRSD. A lot of our teachers took part in some work with Leslie Laud over the springtime, looking at some of the changes she's made. And over the years, since we're not new to SRSD, we've made a lot of adjustments, and it turns out a lot of those adjustments we've made are very similar to the ones that Leslie was making with her group. And so we're excited to start launching that with our teachers this year. It'll be a 2-year rollout. So the writing part of our goal, this is really the first year of it. So we have teachers that will be piloting some of that new language for SRSD and sharing it across the teams. We've also done a lot of work on our scope and sequence in reading. We are very excited about our interactive read alouds, and this year some more work will be done around vocabulary and word work. That was one area. We've gotten a lot of strong foundations with our foundations program. We have some students, again differentiated, who still do need word work in learning to read. And so that is continuing. We talked again at the dyslexia conversation last spring about the different ways we do that, but really now we're going back to talking about where do words come from? We're introducing the Freyer method with our 4th and 5th graders this year, and so really exploring more about the roots of words. And I'm sure Dr. Kavanaugh gets excited when she hears me talking about, Greek and Latin prefixes with students, and that is all coming back as we see that that's really important. We've learned with research that student vocabulary so impacts their ability to understand what they read. So we can't focus on comprehension if we're not focusing on their understanding of words and how to expand their vocabularies. So that's some more work that our teachers will be doing this year that I'm really excited about. In mathematics, we have had the wonderful addition of a math director, K-5, who is a longtime Hopkins teacher, Shelley Moran. Well, I have to share her with the other schools since she's no longer a classroom teacher. It has been awesome to have her, like Deb Moriarty, as a director, K-5. I think she spent some time teaching in each of your schools, so she's really gained an understanding of those K-3 school skills and foundations, and so fact fluency in mathematics, but also then digging deeper into data. She has always been a data queen, so she's one of my favorite people in that way. We like to sit down and we spend a lot of time looking at data. But I'm very excited to be able to include her in our professional learning communities as we dive into math and again look at more ways to expand. I talked last year a little bit how we were piloting some differentiation on the enrichment side even further now. Back in the day, actually at the whole school at curriculum nights, the last 2 nights, parents are back in the building and they were asking, are you bringing back CML? Continental Math League, which I used to do pre-pandemic, and I said, no, we found other ways to really embed deeper mathematical learning within our school day. We don't need to do the plug and chug kind of math, which that was. It was great, and for many of our accelerated students, it was another way to have a different math experience. But I believe we've mentioned in the past Beast Academy, which is part of Art of Problem Solving. We piloted it last spring very successfully for some of our students who really needed a deeper math experience, and we are excited to bring that back this year. Again, using our data to really explore which students are a good match for that and ready for that kind of experience, while at the same time really making sure that our students who are still struggling with fact fluency and some of the basic math skills are still getting a rich grade level standard experience as well. And I think that pretty much covers it. I hope I tried to.
Nice job.
I know.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I just have first of all, excellent. So excited. Love to hear your plans and just all the insights that you share of what happens at your school and everything. Just a general question. You all touched on social emotional. How are the kids this year? Like, we know that last year was a struggle to sort of reorganize around what a school day is, and how are kids this year? Are you seeing this similar to last year or more similar to normal?
So what I'm going to say is a week makes such a difference. At the beginning of the year, you can imagine no one really knows how to walk in a line or down the hall or what a level 0 voice is. A week later, you're seeing even kindergarten classes move with their hands to themselves, behind not big gaps in the line. Amazing, tremendous. We are seeing children benefit from a full year of school. First grade teachers talked about, already they're doing Heggerty, that phonemic awareness program at the very beginning of school. Kids knew how to do it, and they were just zipping along. And they knew how, which is huge, to sit, listen, and repeat and stay on. Like, it's a quick 10-minute lesson, but you're not, hands to yourself, Nancy, come on now, eyes up here, all that stuff. Sometimes that can take a while. They could just get right to it. The kids knew what to do, and it was like, wow, they're doing it. So children are able to jump into lessons. Granted, you still have to revisit and redirect at times, but it is a noticeable difference. One thing I'm going to say that we're working on, we double classes for PE, and at the beginning of the year we're in the gymnasium because you need to know boundaries. You don't leave, you stay together. It's an important lesson for kindergarten. Our kindergarten classes are so large. Dr. Kavanaugh saw some kindergartners in PE. There are a lot of little people in there, and they've got their physical spot where they're doing different moves. And you see them moving their spot to get closer to other people. So you're like, no, your spot's over here. So we'll always be working on redirecting and whatnot, but what a tremendous difference we noticed this year compared to the start of last. And
I would actually echo many of those same feelings. What I would say in Hopkinton is so unique. You all, this is no surprise, but the number of move-ins. So while we would say that it's a 50% turnover in each of our buildings, that actually is not true. It's probably closer to 60%. So at 4th and 5th grade, we do have the majority of us students have come up with the benefit of a Hopkinton education, and both in academics and in social emotional learning, some common experiences. But in our school, I think we're at 47 move-ins Hopkins school this year. So by 4th and 5th grade, what we're seeing is that not all districts were able to, during the pandemic, offer the same kind of rich opportunities that Hopkinton was able to do and provide for our children here. And so that has created some unique challenges. I mean, certainly SRSD, a 4th grader walking in, that's a whole new piece of language and organizers to learn, but that's just writing. But when you may not have been exposed to reading in the same kind of way that we have been able to keep our learning moving along, which I really truly do think we were able to do. And our population is just looking different, and so it comes with different challenges. And as Lauren said, the size, I mean, the difference between a classroom of 20 or 21, when you have 25 children in a classroom and they're fourth grade size, it's not just the classrooms, it's everything. If you came into our third lunch, it's pretty tight in there now. So we're all running 4 lunches, I think, now a day. So it's not just that one space. It's also when you have special education groups and trying to figure out where to put them, that creates some behavioral challenges and social emotional challenges as well, I would say.
And at Elmwood School, I'd just like to say, I think that the year began with incredible positivity. And it was something you could feel. It was palpable. We had a scavenger hunt the week before school began, which is something we've done in various ways over the course of the years. And of course, during the pandemic, it didn't happen. And as soon as we felt like we could last year, I think we did it thinking, yay, we're back to normal. And people were nervous. It was too crowded. People were wearing masks. What if people didn't? So even before the year began, there was tension. There was worry and fears. And I know that some of that still exists, but it seemed like this year when the first parent walked through the door, I organized the day a little differently so that rather than having an hour and a half, I had it all day, which presented other challenges. But for the families, then there were people sort of trickling in and out instead of the running of the bulls, as Vanessa likes to say. But the staff, as they came through the door, the first 2 professional development days, it felt joyful, it felt positive, it was enthusiastic. It had a whole different feel to it, and I just kept saying, I think this year will be better, but I could no longer say, this is it, we're back to normal. We've sort of lost the ability to ever say, I don't think we're ever going back to where we came from, but for the very first time in a long time, it just felt so refreshing. And unlike Vanessa's building, I have a lot of new teachers this year. The new people came in, they were excited to be here. They had a few days with Jeff and their mentors and in orientation. The teachers who returned seemed very refreshed. They had a typical summer. It just felt so good. I can't describe how happy it felt, and I was so grateful to everybody who helped us get there. Because
I like that you said that. I mean, there is an energy, a positive energy. So even with the challenges, it just feels like there's a sense that we're going to figure these things out. Arrivals are a bit challenging. We have 650 kids in the school 10 minutes before the building technically opens, but I just feel like we've done a lot of problem solving together collaboratively to make these figure out. So yes, it's gotten more tighter spaces, but how can we use those spaces to their best capacity?
So that actually leads me to the question I had, which was with your point number 2. I feel like there's one that I was really excited about reading, but I don't think you spent a lot of time on, and I would love to hear a little bit more about it, which is the number 1 in across all curricular areas, where you're talking about collaborating as educators and high-performing school-based teams. And so I just wanted to hear a little bit more about that, because that sounds really cool and very empowering.
So that's looking at data? Is that what you're talking about? That? Which one?
For developing high-impact collaborative teams, support the flexible grouping of students across grade levels.
So we have done data reviews as a school for quite some time, and we have really strong practices in terms of working together as teachers, especially at 5th grade, because they share students across the subjects and have been flexing. We haven't been able to do that at 4th grade, and certainly it was more challenging at both grades over the pandemic. There were obvious and needed changes to that. But we're ready to go back to looking at the data and doing more flexible grouping. And in order to do that, that's where we need to have our teams thinking about all children and what they need in the moment. And so we are excited to work with Deb and Shelley and dive into the data with teachers in teams and figure out what do each child need and how can we best provide it. And again, Yes, class sizes might be a little bigger, but how can we shift students around? And it's flexible. So it's not a fixed mindset that you're going to belong in this class. It's not the old model of saying we're going to have this class of high flyers and this class of students who are still learning the skills. It's a very different model, and it's exciting to watch it happen. And like I said, we were exploring that pre-pandemic, and now we're really going to be able to go further and deep into that.
I would love to hear more about it as it happens. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you all so much. It's really nice to see you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. You can have your seat.
Okay, then that moves us into the district improvement plan.
For some reason, I don't have access to the document. I just sent the request. So hopefully you get it.
It's in the packet too.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So you know that the admin team has been working on this for some time, and just last week we kind of, I think, polished the stone a little bit, and we feel good about where this document is now. So the vision of the Hopkinton Public Schools is that we aspire to be a community of educational innovation where children are challenged and inspired to reach their fullest potential, afforded the agency to define who they will become, and celebrated for their human kindness. And the mission statement, the Hopkinton Public Schools ensures equitable access for all students to academically challenging curricula in a community that supports social emotional learning, ultimately guiding young adults to create their own pathways, engage in citizenship, and foster respect for self and others. And it took a lot of wordsmithing and thinking about what we really wanted to say we are, and this is where we have arrived. All right, so in the district improvement plan, we have 3 big buckets, and they are to plan for enrollment growth. I'm sure that one is not a surprise to anyone. Meet every student's needs and build a community of respect and collaboration. And so we do have a rationale for each one of those areas. The first, as you know, we have predictions that we will be reaching 5,000 students by the year 2030-31. And so we need to plan for changes in our physical plants, our extracurricular spaces, which may result in changes of grade configurations and require construction projects with a commitment to environment and sustainability. Accordingly, the schools must use budgeted resources wisely to provide the highest quality, innovative education for all students, flexing programs to ensure equity and access as student profiles demand. Fortunately, for our public schools, beyond our walls lies a community of invested stakeholders. The second one is meeting every student's needs. The Hopkinton Public Schools see each child as an individual learner and human being. It's imperative to acknowledge that Hopkinton student profiles are diversifying, resulting in broader student needs. Academically, we center first on learning foundational skills within a community, gradually introducing more diverse pathways as students mature and near graduation. We pledge an investment in students' social, emotional, behavioral, and physical wellness, and we commit to growing programs that help students access challenging curricula with the hope to graduate well-balanced young adults who take risks, think independently, believe in themselves, and persevere. And going back sort of even to my opening day remarks to teachers, you know, we really have those sort of big buckets that we're looking at there as well. You know, looking at cultural proficiency, as you hear our building principals talk about, PBIS, DEI, ABAR, all of those things I think that fit in there, and growth mindset as well. And then finally, build a community of respect and collaboration. And while it would be very easy just to focus on our academic successes, the Hopkinton Public Schools believe in helping children develop a capacity for kindness, respect, compassion, and service to others. We believe in collaborative learning and fostering the growth of relational competencies. Students must understand how others live and build relationships across race, class, gender, and learning abilities to create caring learning communities. Every member of our community is expected to model these behaviors. We engage in this work believing that the ends are best met when we also have strong relationships between families and schools. And so with those rationales, if we take a look at the buckets, these are the things that we are doing to ensure those. So I will just run through the bullets quickly. We continue to evaluate our current physical spaces and the programs that inhabit them. We are working with the Elementary School Building Committee 2, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, our owner's project manager, and our designer on the Elmwood School project and its potential effects on the grade configurations throughout the district. And I'll just pause right there to say that, you know, we are not blind to the fact that we certainly have other projects, you know, sort of looming on the horizon. No matter what happens to the Hopkins School, we know that whether it is a 4-5 school or a 5-6 school or it becomes something else along the way, it's clearly not appropriately sized for 2 grade levels anymore. And I think Mrs. Bilella was just speaking to that. So I've probably gone a long way to say that this is a much bigger piece than just that Elmwood project. Employ creative scheduling to optimize student learning as the district addresses space constraints. Budget to ensure increases in FTEs, including support personnel, commensurate with student enrollment increases and departmental demands. So very simply, instead of just thinking about how many teachers do we need, you know, you'll need people who are OT, PT, but you'll also need additional people in finance or HR or building and grounds, and we have to think about those needs as in the school community as a whole. And finally, develop a 3-year plan for special education and budget for its implementation. And I know you've already seen the incipient stages of that. All right, in meeting every student's needs, the elementary principals did talk tonight about the multi-tiered system of support and thinking about that programming district-wide. For us, it's really a process of continuing to redefine what that looks like. Growing the use of social emotional learning and mental health data across 3 tiers. You know, we talk a lot about SEL and mental health, but we do have PAIR data, HSA data, Metro West Health data, there's a 4th one, vocal data. And so taking that and really thinking about how are we doing with our kids' mental health and social emotional well-being. Streamlining the student support tier work, formalizing the referral process and defining strategy and skill development. So when we do have our kids who need something other than tier 1, they need tier 2 or tier 3, how are they referred to that? And what strategies are we building? What skills are we building in those places? Because I think sometimes it becomes easy for us to say, oh, this particular student needs something, and we just put people in places at times because those resources are there. But it really is time, I think, for us with all of our growing needs to think hard about, you know, almost flow chart kind of ways to look at this work. Accordingly, we'll evaluate current support program, our Empower programs, and our Bright programs to assess the efficacy and or needs for changes, employing the Flex Block at the high school and the Tutoring Center at the high school to support academic growth and achievement. Begin to develop our administrators and teachers' cultural proficiency practices. We've done a lot of that work since the start of the school year, and you can see that it's been in everyone's school improvement plan, and determine which rubrics will measure that. Implement disciplinary literacy strategies across grades 6 to 10. Expand opportunities for students' ELA skills. So we're implementing GEODS K-2 this year for the first time, and they're all talking about their writing curriculum revision. Expanding opportunities for students' math skills, growing their fact fluencies, and sort of fattening our intervention tools. To continue the development of the 18 to 22 program to offer a wider array of post-secondary opportunities, and then maximizing the use of our professional learning communities so that we are really reviewing learning and assessment data, and that data is driving high quality instruction and making sure that our kids are getting differentiated lessons in our classrooms every day. And the final one is building a community of respect and collaboration. We will continue to grow our CPAC and LPAC. Implement family interviews with our multilingual families, and Mrs. Rothermick and Dr. Ghosh and Jen Suker and I will be meeting this week to talk about, you know, what it really looks like with intake for all of our students, but also for our families that might need something more. Further design and implement our vision of the graduate work, support and enhance the high school and middle school diversity, equity, and inclusion teams, and establish a high school student council equity committee. Continue work in restorative justice at the middle school and high school. to build, implement, and evaluate a middle school 6 to 8 advisory curriculum over the next 3 years, continue the implementation of K to 5 PBIS, and employing professional development, and exposing our community to varied media to grow cultural proficiency of faculty, staff, and students. And so those are all of the things that we are doing at the district level, and I think you see it in their school improvement plans.
I think the vision of the graduate straddles the line, right? Because it's not just respect and collaboration, it's also meeting every student's need, right? Because by
Yes.
having such an individualized profile of a student, you
For
really
sure.
see their strengths emerge.
Absolutely.
There's a lot in there.
There's
Yeah.
an awful lot.
There
We're
really
doing a
is.
lot, but we're really
Yeah.
doing it.
Every piece of it makes me feel really proud to sit on this committee and have my children in this district. Like these are skill sets that you can't necessarily see at every single school system, right? And we are very lucky to be able to do all this, particularly being just a good person, right? And being able to have hard conversations with others. It's a skill that's desperately needed. And I'm grateful for all of this, particularly our mission statement, and it's wonderful. So I appreciate everybody that worked on this.
Thank you. I will share that with the team because in addition to the 3 of us here, there are 22 others.
Yeah.
You know, so
It's
you don't always
outstanding.
get to see
Yeah.
them.
I also appreciate that it is put in a very digestible for the amount of
Yes.
what you have depth-wise there, that it's not so wordy on 20 different pages, that people can really look at it and understand what it is that you're.
It's very accessible
Right.
too. Like there's not a lot of jargon in there, so a parent could read this and really get a good sense of what their kids are experiencing all day, I think.
Yeah, I really like the rationales.
Yeah.
They're really well written.
Yeah.
They're really clear. They're really clean. You can read them and know exactly where it's coming from, and then the kind of objective bullet points
Yeah.
really match them. So it's really, really well done.
Yeah, it's very thoughtful.
And you know, we started some of this work maybe as long ago as March with a smaller group. And with that group, we just kept saying we wanted to simplify this
Yeah.
so that it was really digestible for anyone in our community.
Yeah.
I think the older model was a little bit busier and it was more challenging.
I appreciate that that's your ongoing sort of, that's like your MO now, because I can't remember what other document went from like 22 pages to 2, so that the community could read it and digest it and understand it, because no one, not no one, but many of us in the community wouldn't sit there and read 22 pages unless we were forced to. Whereas if you looked at a 2-page document,
Right.
I think that it really, and when you said, I'm sorry, I can't remember what you said, but what it made me think of was that, and I will give you credit for it, is that there are so many acronyms in public education, and I am so grateful that you have spelled them all out in here for the community as well, because I know in the school improvement plans, I was listening and reading them earlier this evening and kind of laughing because, like, working in a school, I know what they mean, but does anybody else know what they mean? They all had to Google it before they got to the meeting because they're not sure what half of these acronyms mean. So thank you for taking the time to do that for the community as well.
Well, credit goes to Kim Polnick for that, because she often reads this as the sort of like non-educator, but, sort of outsider.
Right.
And she's like, you better spell those.
Yeah, you need to stay
And
with it.
Googling acronyms can be a scary situation
Oh,
too.
yes.
Like,
They sometimes have many meanings.
With that in a heartbeat. So yes, it's very much appreciated, and it's very well done. And thank you for taking our feedback over the last couple of months too, and working it in there.
it's
'cause
really wonderful.
Yeah, it's a fantastic document.
I love this. I love I read the vision and I feel inspired. I like, the careful word choice. I mean, it's condensed, it's concise, but every word is there for a reason, and you can tell that you guys really worked hard on it. The educational innovation, that you can define who you're going to become is such an empowering idea. Just great. We all saw where we started, and I'm really excited about where you guys brought it. I loved it. Like, I know it says 22, 23, but the vision and mission will hold. They're going to hold now for a while, right? And even the buckets will probably hold beyond this year, right? And the other thing, I love in particular, I feel like especially coming out of the pandemic, and so many of us have been so isolated and focused on ourselves and am I okay? What about me? And this is taking care of yourself, but reaching back into community and the collaborative learning and the focus on community, which is just so essential to everything. So I just really, really love what you guys have done with this. I was going to ask, since you already mentioned it, if the enrollment growth and the specifics for this year, is it possible to add in the broader statement of planning? I mean, it's there, because we are looking at enrollment growth beyond just ESBC2, so in the details.
Oh, sorry. I know what you mean, yes.
You spoke to it, and I was thinking, I wish it were actually on the page, because we really are looking at the impact of enrollment growth across the campus and in all the buildings.
Absolutely. I think it's a good bullet to add. It
Yeah.
really is. I don't know that I thought of it until I read that second bullet, and I thought, whoa, this doesn't speak to as much as we probably need.
And I love this. I know we're going to talk later about school committee, plans and goals and whatever, but I'm inspired to build on this for what our work is. So it's great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That moves us into new business item B, which is policy JH, student attendance. I did see that went out by listserv today to the community. Did you get any questions or comments?
We did not.
Okay. I don't know if you want to.
Sure. It's very simple, I think. Leah, you'll remember that we, a couple of years ago, I think, put the COVID language in there, and policy JH is the student attendance policy. And at the time, we, of course, were encouraging anyone with any COVID symptoms to stay home from school. But now, it doesn't feel like we need that in there any longer, because, very simply, it does say if you have chronic or long-term illness or quarantine, if you're just simply not feeling well, please don't come to school. And I think our kids and our families know that. So what we would like to do is just take the COVID language out and have it go back to its former iteration.
If we take the whole bullet, does it still account for, we really don't want kids with a fever to come to school, even if it's on a chronic or long term? I
agree.
I mean, did we used to have a bullet that said if you're feeling unwell? Because if we take that whole highlighted bullet out, it just goes to chronic or long-term illness or quarantine, but we also don't want unwell children.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking the same thing. Not all of these symptoms, right? But a fever, you probably don't want to be at school.
My recollection, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the policy, the way it was before we had COVID, was that these things in the bullet were to be accounted for in the 5 or 7 day period that are allotted before you hit
The excused
absences. I do wonder, though, about kind of in hindsight, and I know there are other absentee issues that can arise in the schools, but certainly we don't want kids with fevers or multiple symptoms of COVID running around.
Oddly, I hate to say this as a school committee member, but I don't know the tardy versus excusing from school, but I know that in a lot of schools, tardy actually ends up being harsher in the end sometimes than being out. If you're tardy X amount of times, etc. So having the excuse that you had a fever and you were at the doctor's or something is probably worth being in here.
Tardies, and not that I may or may not be speaking from personal experience, but tardies and absences are treated differently. They each have their own bank of what's allowed and what's not. So it may be treated harsher if you have more tardies already, if you're tardy from school that 8th time or whatever, versus if you missed the whole day.
Yeah, I think one of the things about just sort of that casual illness, like I woke up today and I wasn't really feeling all that well, I think I have a cold and I'll probably be out of school for a single day and then maybe I'll go back. Very often, and I know the school nurses will work with families and determine what's excused and what's not excused, and we always leave it to the medical professional. But very often, kids don't get to that 8th absence in, that 6-month period, or like at the high school level, you would lose credit after you reach that 10% mark. So I think it's probably like 9 times in a semester or 18 times in the year, whatever the numbers are. You have to be out a lot for that. And a lot of times that isn't something like I have a chronic illness or bereavement. Sometimes it becomes school avoiding issues and those kinds of things that are very different.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding the policy, because it has, excused absences of tardiness, and then it has extended absence students further down. And so I thought this was just, anytime you need to be excused from school, which would be like the one day I have the 100-degree fever. So maybe I'm misunderstanding the wording of the policy a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think the policy worries about the kid who's going to be out for one day with a cold. I mean, we obviously don't want parents to send their kid to school with the cold, because you get, according to our policy, 5 days, according to the state, 7 days.
Okay.
I wanted to ask a question. I don't want to throw a monkey wrench into the discussion, but I was wondering if the committee has ever considered adding a mental health day to our absence policy, and that a student, particularly our middle and high school students, are feeling like mental health wise, it's just not a great day for them to participate in education, and they won't be able to, be their best. I don't know if something's ever been considered. It's not really included within this policy, that if you're just feeling like, I'm feeling really anxious, I'm feeling overwhelmed, I'm feeling whatever, can I take a mental health day?
Mm-hmm.
And you could give a limit, like you're allowed 1 mental health day a semester or something like that, where it's an excused absence. And that's obviously like coming from a person that does not have an understanding whether the state permits this. And I'm guessing no,
Right.
just based on my understanding of DESI. Yeah, so that's just a question I had.
Yeah, and very often we wouldn't even excuse a common cold.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
right.
mean? Like, we would just say, well, you
Right.
had a cold, just kind of bake it into your 5 days.
Yeah.
If you want to comment on this,
No, I
many
think-
years as a building principal,
Yeah,
this would have come up.
It's a conversation that building administrators and families have often, and we always will say that the parents, the family know their child best.
Right.
And so if a child's not ready to learn,
Yeah.
they're not ready to learn.
Right.
And whether it be mental health or physical health, if a child's not able to be in school, we're going to do our best to honor and respect that.
Okay.
But I think the important thing about both the state statute as well as what we have in place in policy and in practice across our buildings is really focusing on doing everything we can to keep our students in school.
Correct,
Because
yeah.
we know that's where they need to. I think that's more when you think about the spirit versus the letter. And
Yeah.
the spirit of it is that we want to promote the positive presence in school as much as
Clearly,
possible. Yeah. But to your question, I think it's one that's worth consideration. But I think that the language, when you think about wellness, if you're not asking me, but if you were,
No, I am asking.
since you've asked, I might think about something, in lines with, and I'm sure that MASC has some language around it too. But if you were looking at something more akin to, wellness, and thinking about it in broad strokes,
Right.
that might be something that we want to think about. Again, you're not asking me. I don't know if I'd want to put that 1 day allotment in.
Right.
Because it's like, hey, did you take your day?
Yeah.
If you don't need that day, don't
Yeah.
take it. And if you need 2, we don't
Right.
want you to say
No, I
there's one
understand what
day.
you're saying. I was just wondering if we have, particularly as we talk about older kids and
Yeah.
the stress that comes with, what am I doing after school? Or just being an adolescent in middle school is sometimes enough, right? So I was just wondering if we have the leeway, the space for kids to consider their mental health as well as their physical health, especially since we are focusing so much on it and all the other places that we talk about education and biopsychosocial wellness, right?
And I would contend too, knowing, in the short time I've been here, I've already had clear discovery that our building administrators and our educators, they know our kids,
Right.
they know their kids,
Yeah.
and the relationships between teacher, administrator, and family
Yeah.
are exceptionally strong. And I think that active communication on what the student needs is going to really necessitate getting them into school.
Right.
And sometimes you're treating the symptom as much as anything else. So
Right.
what is it that might not have you ready for school, and how can we as a school community wrap ourselves around
Correct.
to provide those
Yeah.
supports?
Yeah, so, the thoughts I have around the specific, outlined reasons in the policy, and you're gonna have parents that are gonna read that to the letter, and then you're gonna have parents that are like, listen, I'll tell them you don't feel good, you're gonna be home, you can watch cartoons today, right? Like, I don't know if the wording is necessary for some families, but it's just something, like, this is not something we need to put in this iteration of this draft, but it's something that I think should be considered moving forward, that we value mental health and physical health, and sometimes, you just need a day. Like, I agree as a school committee member that people should be in school, but sometimes it's just not on, like, you wake up and you're like, absolutely not, right,
So I don't know if this addresses that directly or not, but the letter that goes out from the schools when you hit that 5 and
Yeah.
subsequently 7 days, it allows for the building principal and assistant principal to make, to discuss with the family. It doesn't.
Like discretionary decisions.
Right,
correct.
again, if I had personal experience with it, my experience was that they don't really want kids that are ill in school, but they also aren't trying to push kids who are mentally and socially, emotionally not well to come to school when they're not able to learn.
Okay.
My read from what was in this is that the policy committee, you guys
We
took.
did- we
you
did not
didn't?
discuss
Okay.
this, no.
But that this was looking to remove the COVID protocols, this first bullet piece, and then there's another piece down lower that refers to COVID.
Yeah, it refers to COVID as well. And like I said, I don't want to derail this conversation. It's very clear what is necessary to amend this particular policy, but I thought as a board, it's something to consider maybe for the future.
Well, I mean, so now that we're discussing the policy, we're discussing 5 days. The policy doesn't say anything about 5 days. It's like
that's a
law.
legal thing.
It's
5
a
days.
law.
Yeah.
So if the law changes, that
I'm just saying, like, there's a lot of like lack of clarity.
Yeah.
I feel like as I'm reading through the policy.
What we do is at 5 days, a letter gets sent home. Nothing happens until after the 7th day, because the 7 days meets the Mass General laws. And boy, I feel like I know more than probably I should.
I like that you know these
So
things.
I went.
In the handbook,
Okay.
in the school's handbook.
Right.
Because I went to look at the mask
Yeah.
example one, and it has like the 5 days very clear. It has the 2 days, and then it has kind of the excuse temporarily. It says illness or quarantine. It doesn't say chronic illness, and then it says bereavement or serious illness, etc. And then it talks about longer term stuff. So it leaves it fairly broad, so it could encompass like a fever or whatever. And it also says a student may be excused for other exceptional reasons with the approval of a principal or designee.
which ours says too.
Right. Okay.
Is there a pressing piece that has brought this today, or?
Well, I'll tell you why we started to look at this policy. At the start of the school year, and 2 weeks in, we probably did have 20 families that had not yet sent a kid to school. And so the building principals, of course, get to a place where, they're worried. They're worried about the kids who are not in school in those first couple of weeks, and they worry because when they come in, they will have missed a lot of, routines and those things. And you know what happens when you set up a classroom and there are all new faces and there are 24 students, and kids have now migrated and become like little groups of, we work together, we hang out at recess. And so then on October 1st, for example, a student walks in and joins that classroom, and that student is a little bit outside of the community and doesn't understand all the norms in that classroom. And so they said, we'd like to be able to send something out immediately to families who are not sending kids or who already have hit the 5-day mark early on.
and this is a link in it. So they were worried that if it still said in there that students are excused from attending school just for having symptoms of COVID, that would no longer be true. So we wouldn't want a family to say, but my child has a runny nose and therefore it might be COVID, because that's no longer the case.
Are we seeing a different pattern from other years? Is 20, I mean, it seems to me
20 is a lot.
A lot,
Yes.
but I don't see the data year in year. That's a lot compared to.
It's more this year than we've seen in the past. Yes.
And do we know at this point if there's a percentage of those 20 kids or families who are not just missing, who haven't come back, that maybe have moved elsewhere and somehow that didn't get back to the schools, or are they just absent? What communication, I guess, do we have?
Right, no, we've reconciled the lists.
Okay.
And we've done such a good job with that, I think, that we've had kids in first grade that we said, oops, you shouldn't be in first grade, newcomers,
Yep.
and we've moved them to kindergarten. So I think it's been an almost going through like every kid. But I think that there are families who have traveled and they say, oh, the first week there's only 2 days, and the second week there's only 4 days, we'll just pop in. And I am really sympathetic to the families who are stuck somewhere. We have some who are stuck. They can't get out of where they are. So
here's what at least from my end, I can approve this, but with the understanding that the policy committee will review kind of the wording, see if they can, so approve the change now, but with the understanding that it'll move to the policy committee and the wording will be reviewed a little bit. I don't know how the policy committee feels about that.
We can revisit it. I do have one question though. How does this work either in partnership with or in conflict with the messaging that's coming from the building nurses to the students and staff?
Right.
I can't remember if it's at the school I work at or the school my kids attend, that I've gotten letters saying if you feel any symptoms, stay home.
Right.
So
right. I do think that if our nurses heard that a kid had a temperature of 100 degrees, they would say, do not come to school.
Right.
You know, I think we're getting away from, I guess we're kind of getting away from things like, oh, you have a little sore throat, please don't come to school. But if you have a temperature of 100 degrees, you should definitely stay home from school.
okay.
And that's outlined already in our student handbook, correct? Like the fever is over 99.9, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the nurses are so good. I mean, one of the things that it says in here too is that if your kid is going to be absent, you have to offer the nurse an excuse. So, I mean, in the days of COVID, I could go to the Elmwood School and Kathy Bain, it would be 1 o'clock and she'd still be making the phone calls home.
Yep.
And, you know, like somebody would say, well, he had a sore throat today, I can't send him. Okay, thank you. You know, so they do communicate with families or expect families to call in some communication every single time a kid is absent.
So I have to just get my head. So if my child is ill, just whatever, has a 24-hour stomach bug, and I call in and say she won't be in school today, is that considered a quote-unquote excused absence? And I mean, it is. They're not going to be in school. Again,
Right.
I'm not following. That's part of the 5, or it's 8 or 10 or however many you get. I haven't had close
It's
connection
well,
to this.
I have been told it was
Tell
part
me.
of the 5.
Okay. It's part of the 5, right?
It
Because
should
I've
just
called
kind
it
of get
in.
baked into like part of your 5, like your kid's not here today, but it's not a chronic illness or something like that. It's not one of those big ones. Like I think if your child had strep and it was diagnosed and the doctor said, yes, he's got to be out for 4 days because he has strep, that would certainly be excused.
Yeah. But if they happen to have an illness and the fever persisted for 4 days, and each day the parent thinks it's going to be fine, they just keep calling in, and the fever's still there, they're not sending their kid, those count toward, those are excused absences, right?
I think at that point, the nurse would excuse them. If a fever persisted for 4 days, yes.
So I guess where my disconnect is, and again, I too can take the COVID stuff out of this, and I do think we should look at it again, so I don't want to derail that process, but as a parent, it's a little bit confusing what this policy is saying. Like the MASC policy is saying it's kind of all kinds of absences are explained. This sounds like we're really focused on, I don't know what to call them. I want to say excused absences, but I'm a little confused about how to use this the way it's written, and I think that's on us. You know, it's our policy. It's not a great, it's not clear. And I do think that sometimes our nurses do send I haven't had a letter from a nurse in a while that says, you know, if you have any of these things, stay home.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know that whether, I have missed it if we have received something specific like that, but I do think there is a pressing nature to getting this out, because I think there's a lot of confusion for families where in the past, it's been a very hard if your child has these symptoms, stay home. It still says on the absent thing, like symptoms of COVID, in terms of what you check on the Google form. And I think that it would be important for parents to know that if your child has a stuffy nose, you don't have to keep them home. It's that judgment call of, are they really sick, or they have kind of a minor
Hay fever.
Yeah.
How do we feel about the sentence, it is a crime for a responsible parent or guardian not to cause a child to attend school for any other reason than those listed above? That one's like, it kind of directly conflicts.
When we went through this and added the COVID stuff, I had that same reaction.
I was like, oh
dear, it's a legal statement.
Oh, you have to have it in the policy?
Somewhere in the policy.
Boy.
It was, because I had the same reaction. I was like, whoa.
It's like Smokey the Bear yelling at us, right? Like,
but I do think, like, let's approve,
yeah.
you know, the change for now. Let's have the policy committee look at it, and then let's see what kind of clarification we get from them.
That's great.
Yeah.
So it's that big bulleted part, and then the paragraph that begins with the understanding that during the pandemic, are those the two pieces?
Before you're
Okay. I think
Were
it
there any
should be
other?
redlined.
They are not in the packet. Not
The
in the packet.
bottom
the next
isn't.
one.
The bottom part isn't. The top is.
Right,
if
yes,
you go
this
down,
part is, but
the
I don't think the
edited
bottom
one
part is.
below it.
Oh, it is, it
There you
is,
go.
yep.
Is it?
It isn't in the
It just,
copy
it's
I
not the
have.
whole
If you go
paragraph,
to
just
It's
that
not the whole
sentence.
paragraph, it's just the first, keep scrolling down.
If you scroll down the edited version,
yeah, I
it's
know,
right
I was-
below the current version.
I didn't scroll far enough, I none of us
see.
did, but
That's where it says the
in
7
the
full-day
packet, you were
sessions or
on
14 half-day
Sorry.
sessions.
Yep, keep going.
It's the
What are
last
half-day
2 pages of
sessions?
the packet, so you can't over scroll.
No, if you're keeping your kid out for a half day.
Oh, okay,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Okay, so I move to approve the changes to policy JH, student attendance as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Leah, a second by Jen. All those in favor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and I will look forward to seeing the new thoughts from the policy committee as well. So that brings us, wait a minute, I'm going into new business item C, which is the district planning study allocation, and that is you, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. So you know that we had a balance of money from the $80,000 that had been approved for us at town meeting. And what we were hoping to do with that money is to hire a consultant to look at sort of the educational planning as opposed to just the physical plan. I have been in touch with Athena K-12. They have not provided me yet with any kind of sort of an outline of what the services would be that they would provide or a price tag on that. But what this does ask you to do is to authorize me to spend that remaining money on an educational consultant.
I am excited to see this piece of the work go forward because I think it has broader implications.
Do we have to have relative to the Elmwood School project, or can we have it say in response to enrollment growth?
Right, because isn't this listing, are we looking at the district-wide piece with this?
We will be, yes.
Right, so it says
think
relative to the Elmwood School project in the motion.
Right.
Right, you can certainly take that out. I mean, I think that the Elmwood School project is what has spawned this, but certainly it doesn't have to be in the motion.
Well, I think the piece that we funded last week was, like, they're gonna look at the high school too, for example. And the high school is not actually part of the immediate, probably, chain of dominoes that comes after Elmwood. It may be, but it may not.
Right.
May not be, but it's still part of the equation, so I think. Jen is hesitant.
I'm trying to remember what, it's not the capacity study that this was originally set for, or what was
It
this?
is.
It is. So I guess that's district-wide anyway, capacity
supposed
study,
to be,
right?
yeah.
So, if you want to add in relative to the Elmwood School project and capacity study, then we could connect the two of them.
Well, I think the relative to the Elmwood study is already baked into the Elmwood project, right? I mean, if it's pertaining to the Elmwood school replacement, I think you're already doing the
Okay.
educational planning for that as
That
part of the
comes from
project.
different
This
funds.
this was originally earmarked for all of our enrollment capacity issues. And that's where that additional
Right.
planning piece Perkins Eastman is taking on for us is all the schools. So if this is the corollary in educational planning, it should be all the schools.
I agree with that.
Do you want to just cut that sentence off after educational programmatic planning?
Yeah.
And just remove relative to the Elmwood School project, or doesn't that go far enough?
Or relative to the capacity study, right, or the enrollment. It's really to address enrollment, right? Enrollment growth.
Yes.
The two of them are so connected, I don't know that it really,
Well,
you can't have one without the other,
I just
really,
don't want to
right?
like leave the high school out of it, for example, like that. So I just so as long as we have it covering all capacity issues as we look down the
Across.
projections from
Pre-K to 12.
right, we can anticipate where we're going to be crunched in the secondary schools, and it trickles a little bit later.
Right.
Though sooner than we'd like. So just making sure that if we're thinking about addressing the enrollment growth at the high school or middle school.
But
So
it
here's a
seems to me
question.
that Perkins Eastman is doing that.
Right, and so will the wording of this impact the ability of the district to use those monies to take a look at this across all 13 grades? Do you think?
No,
Or-
I don't think so. I think that what we're really trying to get at here is that if we build a new Elmwood and it happens to be a 2-3-4 school, or even if it happens to be a 2-3 school, we have to think about what the academic program is going to look like. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that already part of the MSBA process? The academic,
No,
so
but
your
the-
educational vision.
But the physical plant stuff will be. So when we
this
say,
is specific to Elmwood.
no,
No? Okay.
no.
That's what we're trying to get at. Like,
Is
like are we talking about okay, they're doing the physical space, and so we need to give money to the educational programming for Elmwood replacement, or are we looking across?
No, they'll actually do a lot of that work for Elmwood.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the other buildings that they're
Okay.
not,
So, for example, would it look at something like what the educational model would be, or what we're looking for educationally? If we did a 2-3-4 school, what does that mean for the sixth grade if it got moved from the middle school to a different school, or what does it look like if you move a different grade someplace else?
right,
So-
so say the sixth grade did end up at Hopkins, and you had to think about academic programming in sort of, I guess, what Perkins Eastman would call like a new box, right? What does that mean for, what is that academic programming? Like, what do we want it to look like? You know, I mean, and I think it's an opportunity for growth, because right now, whatever we have for our sixth graders is just what we have for our sixth graders. You know, if we want to think about something innovative, if they were to move, or even if they weren't to move, this would be our opportunity to do that educationally.
So it's programmatic planning relative to the conclusions found by the Elmwood School project, or the kind of the decisions made by the, is it,
Yeah, it's almost the fallout.
right, it's a fallout,
Yes.
it's from the decisions that we make based on the Elmwood School project.
So that's
So
where the
originally-
relative is.
But originally, before we were in the MSBA pipeline, we approved this money. We wanted this, so originally, we hoped to be an MSBA, but we knew that we had an enrollment problem.
Right.
So now I understand that Perkins Eastman is going to go back and verify the original capacity study in all the schools and look at like, well, the cafeteria's too small, the auditorium's too big, or, then they're going to make recommendations on how to house the human beings that are going to be here in the classrooms doing, and so I thought that we had a piece that was missing that would enable us to look at just enrollment projection solutions and say, sure, we could turn the band room into another English class or something, but that doesn't meet our programmatic needs because we actually want to grow the music program. Or, so it's marrying the vision of programming to the solution for the enrollment growth is kind of what I thought was missing. Or like if we move 6th grade out of the middle school, we have a very big school for 2 grades. Like I think the original capacity study suggested a grade 9 academy. I don't even know where that would be or what that even is, but I do remember it was in the document. So like that could be a very different programmatic change. And how do we look at, I thought the piece that was missing in the work so that we can have a plan is what is driven by enrollment growth. Because I thought the Elmwood stuff, for the most part, was covered. Elmwood and its immediate, adjacent impacts were covered by the MSBA.
But the
Or
impacts
ESBC
to
too.
all the other schools aren't.
But you
Right?
could,
So if we go to 2 through 4 in the new school,
Yeah.
we don't have a way to understand what the impacts to the rest of the schools are because that's not covered by the Elmwood School Project. So I think that's what this is.
Right,
Could
I
we throw in
understand.
pre-K 12 educational programmatic planning in there just so that it's not confusing, that we know that it's across the district in response to the project that's happening right now to hopefully build a new school, as yet to be determined what grades what will be actually in that new school.
I have no problem
Is that
putting
okay?
pre-K to 12 in there.
Just throw it in there,
Well,
and
is
that way
it-
it sort of covers all of our bases, like.
Yeah, is that the work that you
Is that
think
what
you're
you're
doing?
hoping
That's,
is
I just
happening?
wonder
Yeah,
what
yeah.
you're doing.
No,
Like I
that
don't
is
care what
the
the
work
words
that I
say.
think we're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't just make something up, that's what you want.
Right.
No,
All right,
because, I mean,
let's go with
some
that
of the
then.
things, when you look at 102 preschoolers in the marathon school, what happens when the day comes when we're at 120?
Yeah.
So at some point, does it make sense to say preschool will no longer attend marathon?
Right.
Preschool needs its own location, in its own space, and then you get back all of the classrooms, 6 of them in fact, 4 that were original and 2 that we've handed over to preschool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's the kind of work we have to think about.
Right, so we need to include.
So
pre-K.
whatever words reflect the actual work, I
Okay.
think that I'm all for it. Yeah, I just.
All right, so we'll throw pre-K 12 in there, and it does end at 12, we're not gonna, that's where we're ending with
Yeah, it
this
won't include the 18 to
discussion,
20.
just wanted to be, okay, just for confirmation, all right. So I'll move to authorize the superintendent to spend the remaining district planning study funds to hire an educational consultant for pre-K 12 educational programmatic planning relative to the Elmwood School project.
Yeah.
Is that cool with everyone?
Yeah.
Great.
So a motion by Jen.
Yes.
Is there a
second.
second by Holly? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So thank you. That passes. And that brings us into a new item D, which is the school committee professional development. This is a carryover from our discussion that we started this summer with Tony Bent about goals. And Amanda and I I don't know if anybody else attended it because it was a virtual MASC event and you couldn't see who else was there. But it was about goals, setting goals for school committees. It was a little broader than that. But so we had talked back in, I think it was August, about not just that piece needing to bring that forward, but also we had talked about adding in office hours in October and other things. And I'm in trying to kind of conceptualize how we could do this work and fit it in. I think if we don't get it done in October, we get then so late into stuff. It's almost kind of, well, why are we doing that when we're pushing towards the next school year? So I do think there's a timeliness piece of it. The 2 things that, and please jump in if you have other thoughts, but the 2 ways I had thought that we could do it, I do like the idea of bringing Tony Bent back. We could do that, in my mind, one of 2 ways. One would be doing it at the beginning of a school committee meeting and dedicating some time there, like if we were able to start at 6 or 6:30 and put that as our first agenda item for a good solid hour to kick it off. My ideal would be at least by the first October meeting and then complete the rest of the work at the following meeting. We could alternatively do it on a Saturday and kind of push through the whole thing and take the district improvement plan and the help of a consultant and come out with the document then, but I know that people's Saturday times are pretty precious right now with kids and stuff. I'm willing to do it either way, but I want to kind of hear what people's thoughts are.
I like your idea of coming and cranking through an hour prior to a meeting, but I know that I can be here at 6. I don't know
Yep.
if that's feasible for all of you. So, I mean, yeah.
It's feasible, and I agree with Jen. I think that's probably going to be easier for us than like a Saturday morning. You know?
Yeah.
I know your schedule is.
I was gonna say, I'm in the opposite camp. I would love
Saturday.
to just
Yes.
get it like all done
On
at
Saturday.
once and like be really focused on it. I feel like
Yep.
when we do a school committee meeting, we've got, 5 things, 6 things in the mind, and if that particular night there's something that we think is going to be a little contentious and that we have to research a lot, we're not going to come in with the right mindset of let's really focus on this because we'll have too many things in our heads, right? And so doing like a heads down, this is all we're doing today, coming in prepped, I think benefits this type of work. But it's just
And I'd do either. I mean, I think if we did it before a meeting, I think that could work really well, especially if we have pre-work. I think when the
Yes.
select board did their goals, like they had done like their own thinking. They came in with their list, their own personal list, and then it was a matter of coming
So
to
like
agreement.
homework.
Exactly.
So I think to me, ideally, we could get the pre-work out by our next meeting, which is I think the 29th.
Okay.
And then kind of launch it off, whether we do it on a Saturday or do it at a school committee meeting. But I agree, I think the pre-work is important.
Yeah.
So we're not just sort of,
Isn't the next meeting the one where we're gonna have the select board?
so, yes, so
That's
that's why,
next
but that's why that one,
Okay.
my vision wasn't that we would do it then, but that
Okay.
the pre-work would be available for people to do at home, kind of by then, so that there's that time
Okay.
between two
Okay.
spots to.
If a Saturday morning works best for
Yeah.
everybody, I can certainly do that. That's fine with me. I would go with whatever works best for the majority.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm open
Okay.
to it too. I'm open.
All right, so
Just
let
give me
me,
some notice.
tomorrow I will get some potential dates from the consultant and then push those out before the weekend.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have training budget
So
available?
we did budget for people to go to MASC, we always put that in, and then, is there other, did we budget beyond that, so that, like, that's the dollar amount, but
Okay.
that doesn't, because is anybody else going to the MASC conference besides me?
No.
Okay, so that leaves a bulk of money
Okay.
left.
And I don't know if I know what that line item is. Maybe Susan does off the top of her head, but it might be just called like school committee professional development. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Okay.
So I think
fair
it
enough.
fits.
Okay.
That's what
Yeah.
I've got a long way to say.
Yes. Okay, so that brings us down into future agenda items. I know we do have a couple of outstanding things. Does anybody have something they wanted to add that we have not already kind of? Okay. All right, then that brings us into items by consensus.
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in your agenda.
Is there a motion?
So
Motion by Leah.
Second.
Second by Amanda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And that passes. That brings us into adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, so motion by Leah, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Holly, all those in favor? Aye, and our next meeting is actually going to be September 29th here at HCAM. We will be joined by the select board to talk about our budget message, and then October 13th. All right?
Thank you.
Thank you all, and have a good night.
One, two, three, four.